everyone. Melissa here with the Sunshine Planner, and I am back with another fantastic recipe that you guys are not going to want to miss. This is the favorite soup, according to my husband Claire, that I have ever made. So another Mexican, obviously we like Mexican food in this household, but another Mexican recipe called chicken enchilada soup. And it is my own recipe that I started a long time ago with a base recipe, and I have changed it and changed it and changed it, and this is my recipe now. So I hope you all enjoy it, so let's get started making it. Let me first tell you about some of the ingredients that we are using in this recipe. We're going to start the recipe by taking about 1 onion, chopped, diced I should say, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the soup pan, and we're going to saute that with all of the seasonings. One of the things that I love to cook with is infused oils, and we're not cooking on really, really high heat here, so it's okay to start off by cooking with that. And today I'm going to be cooking with garlic oil. And I'm going to saute my onions and the seasonings with a little garlic oil, just enough to coat it so that it can cook. Saute. I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit. I'm going to salt and pepper it just to eyeball it. Just put some in. Whatever you like. If you like a lot, put a lot in. If you don't like a lot, don't put a lot in. And once that gets going, it'll take just a second, but once that gets going, we're going to go ahead and add in the seasonings. And let me tell you the seasonings that I'm using. I am using 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic salt, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle pepper. Obviously, you can adjust those amounts based on your own flavors and what you like. Whenever I make a recipe that I get for the very first time, I really try to make it exactly as the recipe is written, and then I adjust it based on what we like or don't like. So you are welcome to adjust this before you try it, adjust it after you try it, whatever works for you. But those are the seasonings that it calls for. And I'm gonna go ahead and put those in the pan and just give those a stir. So it needed a little more oil, so I put just a little bit more in there, and you can see there's some big onions in here, and I'm just gonna use my spoon to, I like them diced, I don't like them too big, so you can do that. They're onions, they'll do it real easy. A lot of beautiful flavors in there. Still waiting for it to kind of do its thing, so give me a minute to get those going, and I'll show you what's next. So let me talk about what's next with this recipe. After the onions get sauteed and kind of translucent and a little bit soft, we're going to go ahead and combine some mesa and I combine it with chicken stock because I make my own chicken stock. The recipe typically calls for water, and all the chicken stock does is just raise the flavor level. So this recipe would be perfectly fine with just water instead of chicken stock. But if you have chicken stock, even if you have just a cup, put a cup in and then fill it up with water. It really doesn't matter. Like I said, the chicken stock just raises the flavor level of the recipe. So in this recipe, it calls for mesa. Mesa is basically corn flour. This is what they use to make corn tortillas and, I don't know, corn. I've never made corn, but this is what they use to make corn tortillas. I've only ever used this just to make this soup, and I keep it on hand all the time. So it is mesa, and it's, like I said, basically a corn flour. So I put 1 quart of water or chicken stock in this container, And then I added 1 cup of mesa. Let me just tell you that in my experience of all the whisks I've used with this recipe, this one's the best. This whisk is actually a Pampered Chef whisk, but if you can find one like it on Amazon or anywhere else, by all means. But this, or anything similar to this, it's the best whisk to use for this recipe. It just is. I don't know why. But anyway, whisk this up really, really well, because once the onions have kind of done their thing, we're going to add this mesa mixture. Give that just a couple more seconds here. You're gonna whisk this together until the lumps dissolve. You do not want any of the mesa lumps at all, 0. It's really important. And we're gonna add this to the onions and bring it to a boil. Okay, so I've poured that in, and this is the point where you want to bring it to a boil, and you want to, whisk it constantly. If you don't whisk it constantly, then you have this, I don't even know how to describe it, but this flavor that you don't want because of the mesa. You want to keep the mesa from lumping up. So it's really important that you whisk constantly. You don't have to whisk fast or too slow. There's no speed. Just whisk it to keep the lumps from coming on. And once it starts boiling, you want it to boil 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just constantly whisk this, and I'll be right back. So it's boiling, and if you notice, it's really thick. The mesa is a thickening agent for this soup. It's a Mexican flour, so it's a corn flour, so used in Mexican dishes. So it's thickening it up pretty good. And so that's what's gonna make this a nice creamy soup instead of a watery soup, along with the cheese that we put in. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add my 2nd quart of water or soup chicken stock. Sorry. Water is perfectly fine. Like I said, the chicken stock, which I always have on hand, just serves, as raising the bar of the flavor of the soup. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in now, 1 quart. And I'm going to go ahead and whisk while I put it in so that we don't have any clumps. This actually is a very quick recipe to make. The prep time actually probably takes more time than the actual making of the soup itself. So I'm going to bring that back up to a simmer. And while that's doing that, let me go ahead and talk to you about the next ingredients that we're going to be putting in. The next ingredients that we're going to add to this fantastic soup, you guys are absolutely going to love this soup. I'm telling you, of all the recipes I've done, this is one you must try. I absolutely encourage it. Anyway, we're going to add 1 can of enchilada sauce. I use red sauce. I imagine you could use green sauce. I just use red. I pour the whole can in. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then typically I put in a can, or I should say a jar, of my homemade canned Rotel that I do. But for today's purpose, I just went ahead and pulled a backup that I have. Rotel, any flavor, any brand, any whatever you want to put in, Rotel. So I just put the whole can in, juice and all. Okay, I'm gonna give that another stir. And looking at it right now, it really doesn't look like chicken enchilada soup because it looks a little more red now because I've put those ingredients in. But it will be a very cheesy, creamy soup when you're all done. I promise. So the next thing we're gonna do is, I'm just looking at my recipe here because as many times as I've made it, I don't know it by heart. We're gonna bring that back up to a simmer now that we've added some other ingredients. And I'm gonna talk about the cheese. I have a fly around here. I put in Mexican cheese. And I have mine already chopped up into little squares. I put in 16 ounces of cheese is what I do. That just makes it really extra creamy. If it's too creamy from you, back off on the cheese. That's what you can do to accommodate for that. But I happen to have it, half of this bar was in my fridge, so I went ahead and cut this up, 8 ounces. And this happens to be a jalapeno, cheese. Typically, I just use Mexican, and that's what this one is. So I just cut off 8 ounces of this to have a total of 16 ounces. And what I would recommend is that absolutely use Velveeta. Do not substitute this cheese for this recipe. I would use the brand Velveeta. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this, make sure it's coming up to a simmer. Once it's at a simmer, I'm gonna add my cheese. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adding the cheese. And I like to kind of break it up so that it's not all clumped up in one big ball or one big block. It just melts a little more evenly. And then we're gonna give that time to melt, and then we'll come back and add the chicken. So I have moved from my whisk to a spoon, and it really doesn't matter what spoon you use. So just give this a few minutes, and it won't take long for that cheese to melt. All the cheese has melted. So we're gonna let that continue to do its thing, and I'm going to now add the chicken. So I'm just adding 1 rotisserie chicken. You can grill your chicken to make it a little healthier. You can saute your chicken, boneless chicken. You can take it and use chicken breast. You can use chicken wings, whatever you want. For me, I always keep a rotisserie chicken in my freezer just for these types of meals. And so that's what I've done. I took a rotisserie chicken out of the freezer, defrosted it, and I don't shred it. I like it. Actually, my husband likes it in chunks. So you can either cut it in chunks with a knife, or you can just pull it. I just kind of pull it apart in chunks. And so I'm gonna go ahead and add that. I actually use the whole rotisserie chicken, and if you take a look, it's a lot of chicken. But my husband likes very chunky meats in his dishes. So I've went ahead and added a whole rotisserie chicken. You can cut back that meat if it's too much for you. And as you can see, now it's looking more like a creamy orange chicken enchilada soup. And this is the soup, you guys. We're done. This is the final look that you're looking for with this soup. This is kind of what we're looking for. Let me show you the juice. It's not too thin, it's not too thick. Now the next day is when the real flavor is going to come out in this soup. And if it's too thick, you can always add water or chicken stock if it thickens up too much for you overnight. Sometimes that happens. We're gonna go ahead and get started on the toppings, and one of them is fresh cilantro. So I am just gonna pull, well, I guess I could chop a chunk, and we're just gonna go ahead and I just kind of roll it up so it's just, and then I chop it into some little chunks. Okay, And then we just put those in one of the topping bowls. And the next thing one of the next fresh toppings that we're gonna be using is tomatoes. The tomatoes that we're using is San Marzano and Amish paste. Why those tomatoes? Because that's what I have in my garden. I would just use some kind of paste tomato. Truly, you can use any tomato you want. Whatever you have, use that tomato. But I typically use Aroma, San Marzano. If it's in the summertime, I'll use one of my Amish paste tomatoes. So just a pasty kind of tomato, it just gives you, it's just a little meatier. And I like them kind of chunky. Another thing I'm using is Pampered Chef tomato. I am a Pampered Chef lover. I love Pampered Chef utensils and cookware and all of that. I love Pampered Chef. This is called the tomato knife. So if you find your local Pampered Chef representative, I think it's like maybe $12, I don't know. But anyway, I want to get another one. I want 2 of them. I only have one. But this is a fantastic tomato knife. And if you look at these tomatoes, you can see how meaty they are. There's not a lot of seeds. There's not a lot of juice even. It's a very pasty, meaty tomato. So that's why it works really well for this. And I just dice it up. It dices up really easy with this tomato knife. And then these are San Marzanos. They're also very pasty tomatoes. And I do the same thing. I would encourage you to have a San Marzano and Aroma or all your pasty tomatoes you have access to. I would encourage you to have a taste test to see which one you like the most regarding flavor. And that also tells you what you will use on a regular basis when you're cooking. 2 totally different flavors. That's why I opted to go with both of them in this recipe, and I'll just mix them up. But if you see, the San Marzano is a little, not quite as meaty as the Amish paste. So I actually have 4 boxes of the Amish paste in my garden and 2 boxes of San Marzano this year. And the San Marzano does produce a lot of tomatoes. It just takes a lot of tomatoes to get the same. I mean, this was just 1 tomato, my Amish paste. That was just 1. It took 2 of these, and I still don't even have the same amount that I have of the 1 Amish paste. So anyway, just a little tidbit of information there. So we're gonna go ahead and put these in a bowl. And I am gonna go ahead and plate up this soup and we'll give it a try. So I've plated this up into bowls. You guys are going to love this, and you're gonna love it even more the next day. So this is actually a recipe that you can make the day before, put it in the fridge and heat it up for supper for the first time the next day, and it will be better than the day you cooked it. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the toppings that I put on this for added flavor. They're optional. I put them all on. They're all fantastic, but they are optional. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put these toppings on. I have freshly shredded cheese. You can use bagged cheese, you know, that you buy in the store that's already shredded for you. I have fresh chopped cilantro. I have diced onions. If you're not an onion lover, leave them out. And then I have the fresh tomatoes. I also have some sour cream. It's light, that's okay if you like regular. And then I also have tortilla strips. So these tri-colored ones. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I put it together, okay? So I put a little cheese around, just for added creaminess. And this freshly grated cheese is very creamy. I buy it at our local farm market store, Horrocks. It's very, very creamy. And then I just put a little dab of sour cream. And then I put a little cilantro. Not a lot, just you don't want it to overpower your soup. And then some fresh tomatoes. And it is ready to eat. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try. I gotta make sure I get a little bit of everything in there. Tortilla, sour cream, cilantro, chicken. Okay, here we go. You're not gonna be disappointed, I promise you. JC, you have to try this. Come over here and try this.
All right.
Tell me what you think. That's yours.
All right.
JC has to try everything. He does the hard work behind the cameras. It's not too hot, so you can just bite into it.
Oh, there's so many good flavors in there.
Have you ever had any soup that good? I do pride myself in this soup, you guys. I have worked on this soup probably, oh my gosh, maybe 7 years I've worked on this soup to get it just how I like it. It is fantastic. I think I'll have another bite. It does not hardly take, this is an easy soup to make, you guys. The most annoying part of making the soup is when you have to stir constantly for 2 to 3 minutes. Other than that, if you can get past that, this is a fantastic recipe. 2 thumbs up from Melissa from the Sunshine Planner. So, give this a try. Would love to know what you think. Did you make it? And if you did, show me a picture. Tell me what you thought about it. Oh my gosh, I would love to hear from you. So please try it. Tag somebody you think would like it. Tag them in the video. Share it with people you think would like it. I'd really appreciate that. And definitely let me know what you think.